It is my privilege to introduce Kim Christensen. We met some years ago on her first layoff. Actually, it wasn't a layoff. She volunteered and left. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about who she is, but she was at the time the CEO of supply chain for HCA. I hope I have that right. And I don't know, I always mess this up, but I'm going to say about 19 hospitals reported to you. But this is Kim, everybody. Welcome, Kim.
Good morning. Yeah, as Steve said, it was actually kind of a mutual thing because they were consolidating uh, like 12 divisions down to three at the time. And the divisions that they selected to make super centers or super divisions were Dallas and Nashville and Richmond. And so they were good to me. And so when I left, um, I was looking for opportunities, and I had someone approach me about coming to work for their company, which was a family-owned business. They were expanding. At the time, they had promised me, obviously, well, companies tend to do that. They promise you come in as senior manager, and then once the grandson moved up in his position, I was supposed to take the VP role. And that didn't happen. I went in and I restructured. I did set them up for contracting. They didn't have contracts. They really didn't know how to do a lot of anything. And so I set it up and restructured them. Regrettably, the company's vision is not taking them in a direction where they're seeing success. So when they decided that they needed to cut some costs, one of the costs they cut was some of the senior positions, and I happened to be one of them. So then I was back with Steve again. So the one thing that I can tell you is um, I did that for a little over 7 years. And in that 7 year time, the way you submit a resume, the way you contact companies was very different. I will also tell you that I resisted on going on social media. Steve and I had very poignant conversations about how I needed to get on social media and make sure that I had those connections. And now I'm in LinkedIn. I use it all the time. I'm still not a Facebook person. I don't tweet or whatever. I don't do any of that, but I do believe in LinkedIn. So I encourage you to take his counsel and make sure that your information out there is up to date, and that you have a good page and that you get contacts. Um, for me, my journey has been a little bit of a struggle. Two reasons. When you have a lot of experience, and I'm to the point in my career where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't need a senior position anymore. I want to do something that I enjoy, and and I don't have to have that, and I want to spend the rest of my career just, you know, not having to redevelop something over and over again and then go through that whole process I've gone through in my career. So I started looking for something a little bit different. However, Steve and I discussed it several times because I had to do it the first time we met too. I had to dummy down my resume a little bit because sometimes if you have a lot of experience and you're going in with a senior director, a VP, a officer position, you will get discounted really easy, unless you're going to go for those types of positions. For me, it was very, very difficult because I wanted to stay in the state of Utah, and my experience was, as far as an officer went, was very, um, there weren't very many jobs. The market wasn't, um, there wasn't a lot of jobs. Let's just put it that way. And so I had to relook at, okay, so what is it that I would like to do, And so I've done that this time as well. And again, I had to keep my resume at, a director or senior manager kind of level. Um, so far, they did the background check on me. They didn't come back and say, "Hey, that wasn't your title at HCA." I expected them to do that, and I was going to have to come up with a good reason why I fibbed a little. But the company the companies that I was looking at was healthcare. I looked at aerospace. I'm the type of individual that I have to be challenged. I'm just one of those individuals. I have to stay busy. I love learning. Um, I love the intricacies of business and learning the intricacies. My last job, I'd never been a trader before, and I became a commodity trader. That was part of my role as supply chain. And so I love to learn. And so I kind of filled out the sheet Steve has us fill out, and I kind of made that assessment. And then those were the positions that I targeted. Um, uh, I was blessed and fortunate enough, and I seriously mean that, blessed because I love healthcare and I got an opportunity to go back into healthcare, into strategic global sourcing and contracting. And I'm at over an advisory role. So it's really kind of nice because I look at the markets and I look at everything and the trends and I figure our risks and where our pain points are going to be. And then I come up with plans to try to mitigate those. And I love that kind of stuff. The company I'm with now that I'm going with, again, I'm very, very blessed, is Cardinal Healthcare. They're a Fortune 22 company. I used to deal with them when I was in the hospital sector, and I admire them. And so that's another thing that you need to look at. You don't want to you don't want to just be applying for everything just to say, hey, I got to have a job, and then not be able to feel confident that what you're doing and the company that you're with is where you want to be, because then you're just going to make yourself unhappy. So take the time. Um, there's several of us that have been at this for several months. The market got bad with just what's going on in the world market and what's going on geopolitically. So I think the job market's going to open, but I just encourage you to look for those opportunities that you feel like that you can excel and that you're going to enjoy, and give yourself a little bit of time and be good to yourself, because there's going to become moments. I'm so callous now. When I get a rejection letter, I'm like, yeah, well, okay, I'll just put that in my folder. Um, and I've done a lot of interviews. I've gotten to, I got to second rounds, and they would go, um, well, and I would say to them, because I'm I'm not shy. I'm very forthright. And I say to them, okay, is there any concerns that I may address that you've had over this interview process, or you see within my resume that would that the concerns that would prevent me from going further, or prevent me from being considered for the position? And I continually got, well, you're overqualified. And even I got that with Northrop, and I was struggling with Northrop to try to even get to the second interview. This time I'd accepted the job with Cardinal, and Northrop called me back and said, "You're one of two people we'd like to interview for the final position." So I was like, "Oh, cool." At the end, everything's coming about. So I think it's practice. Uh, you have to, you may be really good at interviewing, but you have to get good at accepting the fact that they may not see you as the right fit. So I just keep at it. I think with Cardinal, I was more upfront. I When I was talking to the recruiter who I've become a good friend with at Cardinal, I said, "Look, you're going to think I'm overqualified. You're right, I am. This is the kind of thing I want to do. I know what your salary range is. I know what your requirements are. I know all about your company. I want to be part of Cardinal." I said, "I've applied several times." I said, I'm not just applying for it to be applying for a job. I'm very interested in contributing to your team. And so I was a little bit more upfront initially. When I got to talk to the manager, I was upfront again. And then eventually, when I talked to the vice president, I asked him that same question. And he said to me, "I think you're going to be bored. I think you're overqualified." So I went through it again and tried to make sure that I had reassured him. And luckily, I must have reassured him enough. They said they're terribly excited to have me on board and can't believe that I accepted it. And the vice president told me that, "What are you going to do if you get bored?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to find ways that I may suggest that we could improve, and I'll submit those to my manager. And if she allows me to work on them, I'll work on them. Or if you need additional help because of the fact that you're going to have to move some of your production into the United States due to tariffs, I am experienced in that. So I could work on projects for you." So I think the thing you have to do is let them know that they are getting one hell of a deal because you have experience and that you're willing to step back to learn their company, uh, and you have enough confidence in yourself that you know where you're gonna want to go and that you can get there. And so that would be that would be my recommendations.
All right, Kim, I have a couple questions for you myself. So I'm going to add myself to the spotlight first. Um, would you, so one thing, if anybody ever wants to do a federal resume, Kim has taken the federal resume book and become a student of it. And I have the best template, thanks to Kim, if you're ever looking at a federal job. But would you share the story of the day before you were told it's down to three people on your last job, and how you felt like you were pacing the floor as we were talking over the phone or via Zoom, and you said, and about your thank you cards. Can you tell that story for everybody and how important thank you cards might be?
Yes. So that's one thing that I do. I'm um I'm really good after, especially the first time after Steve went through and he goes, "You make sure that you follow up." So uh, you can't use an excuse. I may not have their email. If you can't figure out how to go in there and get their email because you've got the recruiter's email and you mirror it, they're going to take that into consideration, right? The VP on my last interview and my manager and the panel interview, I think I went through 4 interviews before I finally got this position. But each one, I made sure that I sent out emails thanking them. I was very specific about the things that we talked about in the interview. I reinforced um, what I understood the job to be. I reinforced the skill sets that I had that could contribute to what they were looking for. And so don't, I mean, I am also a student of AI. I am very, even though I've been around forever, I'm very tech savvy. And so, yeah, you can use AI to help you, but make sure that when you're putting into AI, if you're going to have it help you formulate a response, you put so it understands, okay, here's what we went through, here's what I understand the job's about, and here's my qualifications. Don't send out the thank you for interviewing me. I really appreciate your time. I hope you consider me for this position and then sign your name, because then you look like everybody else because they'll read them. I did when I mean, I've hired my entire career, and I always read them. And I, if somebody didn't respond after we had interviewed them, they went on the I'm not so sure list. So make sure that you do that. It's imperative.
Okay.
And yes, you're right. I paced the floor and I kept wondering whether I was going to get the job and if I'd done everything I could possibly do to be successful. So I think we all question it. The thing is to keep a little faith and don't give up.
Okay. As tradition, I'm going to put people on here randomly. They can either just congratulate you or if they have a question, I want them to ask you a question. So first on that will be random, will be Dax. And he expected that, I'm pretty sure.
I actually did. I like moved my arm so I'm close to the unmute button. But yeah, no, thanks, Kim. Congratulations. And yeah, I loved hearing what you were saying about just straight up addressing the overqualified question because I know that's been something that I've come up against, and that it's not always actually addressed by the other side if you don't address it. So I loved hearing that. If you've got any part of that of what you might have done on your resume side as well to sort of um, kind of
Well,
lower your
I
qualifications or however you want to phrase that, but I think that's something too. And I don't know how much that one's hard because I feel like anybody can go to my LinkedIn and look at whatever I don't change on my resume, but
So the one thing I've done on LinkedIn is I instead of putting my resume, so they can read it, I've got segments where I put paragraphs in where I talk about my experience. And that way it gave me flexibility to actually mold it to whatever the position was. The other thing is I caution you on your titles, right? To have a supply chain officer title on mine about killed me. So, what I did is I talked with Steve, we put it as a regional director, which I still took credit for the scope of what I had. I in the body of what I what my skill sets were and what my accomplishments were. I didn't change any of that because it fit really well, and a lot of these companies will have some form of technology go in there and look for key phrases, um, key skill sets, and if you don't have them, your resume will kick out. And I actually, I'll be honest with you, Dax, I was surprised. Don't give up on the remote ones. I thought, oh my gosh, there's over 100 people on Steve. I remember talking to Steve and he goes, yeah, there's probably more than 100. It's like, oh, great. But so I got interviews with GE. I got interviews with, you guys are not going to recognize these guys, but, and they called me again back because they wanted me to look at another position. But Vizient, they're a national, they're the largest group purchasing organization for healthcare out there. So they're a huge company on Fortune 100 list, right? Cardinal was the same way. So I know that it can seem like, oh my gosh, why would I even apply? There's like so many people applying. But I think it speaks to, I revised the way I did my resume, even from the way I did it 7 years ago. Even my federal one, I updated it just because of the way um, the automation looks at it now. So I would encourage you to make sure you do that. Make sure you spend time on it. I did on mine. I had actual titles with sections where it said sourcing and contracting. It said, trying to remember, cross-functional teams, and it had it in bold, and that was the first thing it said, and then it talked about my accomplishments and my skills. So I keyed in on those key skill sets or functions that the job was requiring, and made sure that those were the first piece of my resume, and then I went into the skills that I had with it. And I am famous for putting data in. I let them know I managed 800 million in spend, and I year over year would get anywhere from 10 to 15% cost savings. And then if you're going to put that, you should put it, by the way, if you're going to put those kind of statistics, make sure that when you do that when you're doing your interview, that you back it up. And even your resume should have the STAR method in it, right? It should talk about a little bit about, what you were trying to accomplish, steps you took, result, right? So you got to you kind of put it in that kind of format, because that's the format that the automation's looking for these days. Sorry, that
Awesome.
was a long response. I
No, that was a
apologize.
great response. No, it's all, I think it's all helpful to all of us because everybody's at a different stage. So it's awesome. Thank you. And congratulations again.
And Dax is probably the best on LinkedIn. He has something to say every week. I'm like, I don't even know what to say. And yet he's commenting, and everybody's connecting to it. And that's good because he keeps top of mind with everybody. I know Dax through his LinkedIn more than I do through these calls, just because he tries to stay current every week and he tries to come up with something every week. So I encourage you to, get with him and get some feedback on how he goes about that and how he networks, because I think he does an excellent job.
Yeah, thanks. I'll give a quick tip. Just this is like not to take up anybody's time, but the biggest thing I've learned in the last year of being on LinkedIn is put less thought into it. Just do it. Just posting something is more valuable than not posting because you're trying to think of something perfect.
And I think that's a good idea. I'll be honest with you. I took a couple of courses in there, and then that said, did you want to post it? And I'm like, no. And then I saw you were posting stuff, and I'm thinking, I'm going to tell them that I did an AI course. So I posted that I'm certified on an AI course. It was amazing. Cardinal noticed it.
Yeah,
So
and that's exactly why, because
yeah,
it boosts LinkedIn returning your name in searches for other people, and that's the biggest factor for posting. So yeah,
yeah.
thanks,
And when
Kim.
they look you up, it pops up. Anything that you've commented on or anything, any of that, it all pops up for some prospective employer. Do be cautious, because you will get recruiters that are phishing. Just, and don't be discouraged by that, and don't think that everybody's fishing. Make sure that you're talking to everybody and you're validating, because you may have somebody out there that really is looking for someone and is representing the company, and they're not just fishing to try to hook a company so that they can get fees off of them. So you kind of have to wade through all of that when you're part of LinkedIn. But again, it's worth it.
Okay, thanks, Dax. I'm randomizing here, so I'm going to go with a brand new person. That's Janine. I'll put her next.
Hi, everyone. So Kim, just congrats again. Curious to your thoughts then, because you talked a lot about like titles and getting the right title for it. And what are your thoughts on the title differences across small companies versus larger companies? And if you're at smaller companies like there, I feel like, yeah, having a, a CMO or, a high title is more acceptable because there might only be, 20 people at that firm. Whereas if you're trying to talk about like GE and some of those larger organizations you talked at, like that's a very, very different thing. So I'm surprised that you felt the need to like dial things back. Was that more, especially if it sounds like you were at some of those larger companies as well? So just your thoughts as like you were applying to jobs, seeing roles, like how did that impact your search and the types of things that you were looking for? Were you going very, very broad, or were you really trying to like, this is the specific opportunities that I'm looking for?
So I tried to identify where I wanted to be, and I'm at a point in my career where I knew what I kind of wanted to do and what I wanted to focus on. I'm very change oriented. In fact, this company Cardinal that I'm going to work for, this position is actually a brand new position. I learned that through the VP. And so I love that. I love developing something brand new and taking it from the ground up. And I feel like I'm pretty good at it. So if I would have put supply chain officer, which I had before on a couple of positions that I applied with Cardinal, they didn't even give me the time of day. So I thought, I got to remember what Steve said. I got to dumb it down. So I did. The problem that I had is HCA is the largest hospital company in the nation. In fact, they're probably one of the largest in the world. So anybody that is in healthcare, anybody that is in that group, even GE knew who they were, right? So if I put that I was an officer, I was going to get discounted immediately, right? I put that I was a regional. That's very different from a corporate, right? But still in all, it was kicking it out, or I was intimidating people that were looking to hire me because they felt like I was overqualified. So in fact, in Northrop, I went in there and I had that on my resume. And I literally, even though she interviewed me, she told me she was intimidated by it and that I could probably do her job or her boss's job, and so I'm like, I left and I'm like, oh great. So I just shot myself in the foot. And I did, because I didn't get a second call back. The next time I interviewed or I sent a resume in with Northrop, I put director. The next time I did it with Cardinal, I put director. Listen to Steve. He knows what he's talking about. Don't try to second guess him. He's been doing this forever. So, yeah. Now, if you want an officer position and you're going for those very few jobs that are around, absolutely put that down. But if you're trying to get back in and maybe you know, relook at what you're going to do, maybe kind of change your career up a little bit, then you may want to look at your titles and adjust those if you're not getting enough callbacks for interviews.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Thanks, Janine. Next up is Justin.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
don't really have any questions. I just liked what you said about knowing the company you wanted to go for. I never had it in mind, so I did actually. I remember as a technical support engineer, we helped Cardinal Health, and they were known mostly because the guy didn't know what he's doing. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they've got a little bit of structure that issues with their IT.
with their
The
team.
VP told me that they had brought in consultants
Uh-huh.
and then hired them, and they decided to go back to being internal. So that's another thing for you guys. My son is he's a network admin, and he does, he actually goes outside of that scope, and he lost his position and went with a contractor, and then the contractor is hiring their own internal. So a lot of companies, for you guys who are IT or anything on the information side, sometimes you got to go with a contractor, and then they'll hire, which is the next phase Cardinal's taking because they had some issues.
Hmm. Okay. That's all I had. Sorry. I don't want to waste any more time.
Okay,
Thank you. Congrats.
thanks. Next up is Liz.
Congratulations. It's wonderful to hear. Um, I unfortunately can't think of anything more to add or to ask, but it's awesome to know that the high-end jobs are still around.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Next is Jason. Jason Trowbridge.
Hello, thank you, Liz. So um, I re unmute your microphone if you want to speak. Okay. Sorry, Zoom popped up a dialogue saying for me to unmute, whatever. I appreciate your story. Thank you very much. And I have to say, I really appreciate the part where you talked about keeping the faith as things take time. Unfortunately, this is um, the last time I was laid off. I admit that I did get the you are hired really early, and then I spent 6, 7 weeks while they completed the background check before I could actually get started. Um, and this one is also, I'm waiting and have been waiting for quite some time for them to make a decision about whether or not they're going to hire me. I have faith because they keep providing me updates. They haven't ghosted me. They're saying, this is why we're stuck and we haven't provided a definitive answer. Um, so it can definitely feel hard
Well,
while you're
and
waiting for
don't
that.
be don't be afraid to communicate with them. I mean,
Yes.
I think that the fact that you're staying in communication with them is good, because people sometimes get timid, and even if they do ghost you, so what? Move
Yeah.
on. But
No, I've been writing to them to make sure that they remember that I'm there. But I notice that sometimes, like really early in the morning, they will send me an email before I've even had a chance, and then I can respond back to it and thank them for providing it.
Yeah,
I
I would that's a very good point. When you're in your interviews and you've moved to the second and you're about to go to your third, or whatever, like in my case, the fourth, I kept in constant communication with them. And you can always tell somebody's interest because they're always giving you feedback and they're always
yeah.
emailing you back. There's a large hospital company in Utah called Intermountain, and they kept telling me I was overqualified. I would get to the second interview, and they'd email me back and forth, and then all of a sudden they start ghosting me, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, it's gone. But I would have done it the same way again and again, because you don't know whether it'll pay off or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes they do that because they're trying to see who's interested the most, especially if it's really close. It's the person that stays in contact with them that is probably going to get the nod.
And I also appreciate your thing about the thank you notes that you were talking about being specific about things. And it was one of those where it was like, I sent a thank you note, and it was like I didn't go into too much detail, but I did mention some of the stuff that we'd been interviewed with. So it's like, yes, I did the thing that Kim was suggesting. Thank you very much. I appreciate this.
Thanks. Next up is Carol.
Congratulations, Kim. You're giving us all a lot of hope. The ones of us are young in our career, shall we say. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I started doing thank you notes myself again after not doing them for a long time. So we'll see if that works on a couple of the interview companies I'm interviewing with currently. So
Well, don't give up. I mean, it's the right thing to do. So,
yeah, it takes a while, but with some AI tools and a lot of prompting around the questions that you talked about or that they asked that they might have been a little reluctant on, AI can help formulate a pretty good answer if you put the job description in along with your resume and what those questions were and tone and language, shall we say.
well, and we've got amazing tools now. I have my iPad, and if I'm going through the first part of the interview where they're gonna give me more job detail, and I want to make sure, because sometimes the written job description doesn't really give you all the nuances, and you want to hear where their pain points are. So they're looking for a specific person to address certain pain points. Like in this position, I knew healthcare well enough that I knew why they were doing what they were doing, but they reinforced it when they gave me the details about the job description. And so I just went on notes and I hit my mic and it just recorded it all. And yeah, some of it ends up being gibberish because it's not perfect yet, right? When it's recording, but you get enough of it that you can go back and refer to it, because sometimes in the heat of the moment, you forget those key points. And so if you do that, you go back and take a look. And if you didn't feel like in the interview that you addressed it as solid as you would like to address it, then you can address it in that thank you note. And that's why Steve reinforces those so much, because it gives you an opportunity to strengthen a point that maybe you felt like you were a little weak on, or emphasize, your skill sets in the areas that they are specifically looking for. So,
Anyway, congrats.
Thanks, Carol. Next up is Chris Hislop.
Excuse me. Congratulations, Kim. That's awesome. I just echo what everyone else is saying. It's definitely love to hear stories like this. So I have a couple questions. When you got through, and I liked how blunt you were with saying, "Hey, look, comfortable with this position. That's why I'm applying for it." You told them all that. Did you know anybody at Cardinal that you had known in your previous life that you said, "Hey, I know so and so. Will you go check out so and so?"
no, I knew enough about the company, but a lot of the guys that I had interactions with had either retired or they had moved on. However, I understood enough about the organization that they felt a connection. They knew HCA, that gave them a connection. Um, uh, so the thing that I would encourage is that even at Northrop, I tried to make contacts with some folks, and I would use them as a reference. I even did that at Intermountain. But the biggest thing I think is once you get into that interview, make a connection with a company itself. If you don't have somebody specific that you know within the company that can vouch for you, what they want to hear is you understand their mission and vision. You understand what their strategy may be for the next 5 years. And when you're going through the interview process, you're respectful, but you're also, as you're answering the questions, you're also asking questions of your own so that they see that there is an interest there and that you understand what they're going to try to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years. Because every company has a 5 to 10 year strategy, and every company financials is based on that strategy. So if you understand it and you're passionate about it and how you can contribute, sometimes that can overcome the fact that you may not have a direct connection with inside someone, a physical person inside the company.
Awesome. And then I just have one last question. I actually have an interview this week with someone in Illinois, and my question is, would it be unorthodox, or just your opinion? It's probably an opinion question. Is I'm going to do the thank you card, but I was thinking about just taking a picture of the thank you card and sending the screenshot. So rather than trying to mail it, she'll see the screenshot of the thank you card. Would it be better just to mail it, or would that be appropriate, do you think?
I think it's more professional to email it. Now,
Okay.
one thing that I can give you guys a hint, I stayed connected with my recruiter. So when I was sending thank you cards, I copied my recruiter. So they understood what I was communicating back and forth. And also, if I got an email address wrong, hopefully she would forward it for me. And I asked her to do that. I said, as I'm going through this process, if I happen to get an email address wrong, will you please forward my thank you note? The manager I interviewed first, and then I went to a panel, and then I went to the VP. So I also CC'd that manager, those thank you notes. And that's very professional to do, is just let them know that you appreciate that you keep getting the opportunity to go further along in the interview process. Also, it helps because in the interviews, each party will emphasize something different that they're looking for this position. And when you do what I recommend is that you kind of go over the important points in the interview and how you fit into that, how you can contribute, then all parties, especially your manager and the recruiter, are hearing that, because you want everybody to be your champion. That recruiter was pushing so hard, and so was the manager eventually, that when I went to the panel interview and when I went to the VP interview, the VP told me he was getting so much pressure them to take serious consideration of me, because when we talked about me being overqualified, he told me that he had people that I had previously interviewed with that were championing me. Now, he could have said that about the other candidate. I have no idea. But either way, that's the kind of help that you need as you're going through this process to get hired. So I always keep a friendly relationship with everybody that I've had contact with.
Can I add one quick anecdote too as to why I feel like emailing the thank you letters is much better than physically mailing them? Is because things move so fast. Like a lot of the roles that I've been hiring for, they're circling the wagons that afternoon saying, what did you think of this candidate? And so you can't wait the 4 or 5 days that it would take for the physical mail to show up. And there was one company I worked for, I was there for 3 weeks. And then the hiring manager came into my office and said, hey, look, I just got the thank you card you sent, because it goes to the mailroom and he knows he never checks the physical snail mail there because it's always just junk mail. So he didn't even see it until I had been working there for 3 weeks and had gotten the job already too. So definitely I would recommend just email it. I think that's the way that things are going, even though I love like a nice handwritten letter and the emotion that can convey as well too. But I feel like just with the pace of how things move, like email's the way to go.
Yeah, I would agree. And the other thing I would say is, like, 5 to 10 minutes after your interview, make sure you get an email out, because you've got, especially if you're having a panel interview, you've got them discussing your candidacy, and you want that email popping up in their inbox so that they can potentially review it as they're sitting there discussing your candidacy, and you're reinforcing what you could contribute to that company.
Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you.
I'll add one more quick thing that Kim, you mentioned CCing the hiring manager or whoever. I learned that lesson this week with an interview I did back or last week, I guess, back on Tuesday with two other members, and the hiring manager wasn't there, but I've had a good sort of like formed a good relationship with her throughout this process. But I only sent the thank you notes to each of those two individually, and then I never heard back from anybody until like Friday morning. And I thought, well, I'm gonna just send, a happy weekend note to the hiring manager. And she was like, oh, thank you so much for finally following up. And they had never mentioned to her that they had heard back from me. And
That's
it turned
right.
out well, I'm talking to him again this week, but it very easily could have gone the other way because they were not actually communicating internally. So yeah,
Yeah.
the CC, the hiring manager, is a very good tip.
Yeah, I've done that with every one of my interviews. And some of it is because of my professional career and what I like to see, um, and how we went about hiring and just knowing the process. I just think it's a good idea.
Thank you. That's a whole discussion we can have on thank you cards, or thank you emails, or however we do that. Next up is Travis.
Let's see. We've got everything. Sorry, I had something just pop up. Hey, Kim. I've been taking copious notes based off of everything you've provided. Overqualification is something I've definitely run into, especially when you're in a highly specialized, when you have a highly specialized work history. Um, Great tips on that. Um, One of the things that I have been looking at, you'd mentioned using AI as a tool. I've been trying to go into trying to find specific courses on AI literacy, both as a tool for your day-to-day work, but also as a as a resume bolstering tool. I've been finally got my LinkedIn Learning set up with my library card, but drilling back down into the overqualification and also the interview process. One of the one of the tips and tricks that I learned recently, especially at the end of at least the initial interview, was essentially when they say, "Do you have any questions for us?" Um, I have trained myself to say, based off of the contents of our conversation, and based off of the skills you see in my resume, what sort of challenges or opportunities, and of course, verbiage is of utmost importance. What sort of challenges or opportunities do you see for me stepping into this position? It is a bit, I realize it's very forward, but it also puts like it changes the pressure and puts it back on them, and it almost requires them to give you immediate feedback. Um, what sorts of steps do you see for either moving from a highly specified to a more generalized? Because having been in a highly specified career, Sorry. By the way, hi, Kim. I'm Travis. I've done workforce management for about 20 years now, but workforce management is a very specific title, but the skills required are primarily statistics, data, that sort of thing. I guess I'm getting, sorry, ADD brain. I'm throwing a lot out there. And I've actually lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I keep taking notes. Maybe that's something I should work on in the future so I don't lose my track of thought. Let's see. Let's go grand to small. You know, it's all notes. So,
Travis, it sounded like you had
One thing that I would recommend is that you don't overcomplicate things. So, yes, you're leaving yourself vulnerable when you're asking that question, but I would just say to them, is there any concerns that I may address after, and it's just like I said, that I may address, and that's one of my questions. Now, I always ask that's my last question that I ask them. But I make sure, and I'm keep track of the time, because if you only get one question, that's got to be your question, right? Keep track of the time because they'll usually end you. And so if you don't have enough time to ask 2 or 3 questions, make sure you keep it simple and make sure that that is the question that you ask. Do you have any concerns that I may address after our conversation and after you reviewed my resume? And it
you had
does
brought
leave
up,
you vulnerable, but it gives you the opportunity to clarify anything that they have concerns over.
during the previous, it was mentioned using notes or essentially some sort of transcription during the online conversation. Is that, I mean, maybe that's just a software feature, and I'll look into that. But thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously
have
the
the
timing
Apple
and the
products.
pacing.
I have the
Okay.
Apple products, and so they have a feature in there called Notes, and it's quick. It works very, very quickly, and so I just use it. There's apps that you can buy that do that. I don't know that I would spend the money because none of them are perfect yet. But the idea is that you're just kind of recording your conversation back and
Yeah.
forth, and where you're saying, God, I get really nervous and I'm struggling a little bit to, keep focused and make sure that I understand the key points. That would be excellent for you, because then you could take a breath, and after the interview, you could go back and you could take a look and you go, oh, this kept coming up in the interview. I don't feel like I addressed this really well, and I do have this skill. So in my thank you note, I'm going to make sure that I emphasize that.
Excellent. But other than that, congratulations. I heard you keep mentioning Northrop, and I started thinking Northrop Grumman, just because I grew up in northern Utah, and it used to be called Morton Thiokol. I'm not sure, or later ATK. May not be the same thing, but that was like 20 minutes away from where I grew up.
They're gonna probably do a lot, and over the last weekend, because who do you think helps build some of that stuff? So they're gonna probably be looking for resources. We're very fortunate in the state of Utah. We have a lot of aerospace industry. So if that interests you, you will have to go through a full background check, and it does take a while. And like I said, they're slow, because I interviewed with them before I interviewed with Cardinal, and Cardinal moved faster than Northrop would. But
anything with government ties,
it's
they
slow.
get deep.
Yeah.
I
So
worked
you
on
just
the
have to be patient.
yeah.
In fact,
I
Hill's doing a little bit, not in my area, but I know
Hell,
Hill's
yeah.
doing some hiring for you guys that are in the IT field. So just FYI.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate your time.
Mhm.
Hey, I've got a few more left, and then we'll be turning time over to some other people. But this is Arian. I lost his picture, but he's there, I think. Well, we will go on to Roger.
Hi Kim. Congratulations on your new job. Is there anything you did particularly to help you prepare for your interviews?
Yes, that's a very good question. Um, in the old days, I would look at the job description, I would research the company, and then I would make sure that, again, I understood what I call their pain points, right? Um, now, and I would pick out three, because if you got a half an hour interview, they're going to emphasize three things that they're looking for, and they're going to ask three situational questions that will relate to that. Now you got AI. I'm a big AI fan. I don't use Chat GPT, but I use a form of it. And so when I go in and I look it up, I say to the AI tool, the chatbot, I say, here's the job description, here's my resume. I need three three areas that I need to emphasize in this. And I tell it, I'm in my first interview, and I give them the title of the person. I don't give them the name, but I give them the title of the person that I'm interviewing with. And that's really important, because when you get into a panel interview, you get, like I with Cardinal, my panel interview was with somebody on the procurement side that I was going to support and give advice to, right? I had somebody on a peer that will be my peer on my team, which is the analytics team, and then I had a quality person on there. Well, a quality individual is going to ask different questions than the other two are, and so when you've got a chat bot, it can kind of help you think outside the box quicker. I used to put it together all manually, but it does help you quicker if you're struggling. And I tell it to put it into a STAR method and give me ideas about what the questions could be and how to respond. And I don't know, I'm sure Steve, he always goes through this. Your elevator speech, make sure you know what your elevator speech is. So I've used those types of tools to um, to get that information quicker. And then it allows me to go through that material over and over again. And you don't have to memorize it, nor should you read it, even on a virtual interview. They'll be able to tell that you're reading something, and that'll be a problem. So what I would recommend is that you review it enough, get up, walk the room, review it, be active while you're reviewing it, then it'll stick. And then you'll be surprised. That information will automatically come to you, and those responses will already come to you in that interview. So that's what I would recommend for your prep.
What version of AI did you use to?
Let me try to, I think
Could
I've
you,
got the most recent, but let me give you. By the way, if you're going to get an AI tool, you're probably going to have to pay for it. I use Claude. And the
Claude?
reason I do that is because it's more technically advanced than just your regular Chat GPT. I mean, it's based on ChatGPT format, but I like Claude. And it's spelled Claude. And I think it's like $100 annually. And I think it's worth it.
Thank
I
you.
even use it. I was trying to help my new math. My grandson's 10. And I'm like, how do I explain this concept to a 10-year-old? And here's the problem, and here's what the documentation is telling us how we should solve this problem. So he went up and it explained it to me, and I go, okay, I can now explain it. I mean, I knew how to do it, but I didn't know how to explain it to him. It was great. So, I mean, you can use it for, you know, any number of things. It's actually sophisticated enough that I could actually go in and tell it, I put a spreadsheet in there or data in there and ask it to put a dashboard together for me, a preliminary dashboard, and it'll put a dashboard together for you. So it's great tools. If you get the opportunity, make sure you're taking courses. It's going to be the new wave of the future. It's going to help us get the data quicker so that we can look at the data and make decisions faster. So
you found it a lot better than using ChatGPT,
yeah, I've used both. I like Claude.
Claude.
Yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations. That's all I have.
Thanks, Roger. Next up is Robert.
Okay. You probably already answered it, but I guess there's a value to have a large resume just with everything that you have, and then I'm guessing put it into like AI to kind of tone it down to whatever job you're looking at. Is it a good idea to have a large, not maybe not a resume, but just something, everything that you've done in your past?
Well, I would take a look at the templates that Steve hands you out. For me, my resume, if you were to look at it right now, it's only got 2 jobs on there, and it's because I spent 16 plus years in my one position at HCA. Although I've spent I have almost 25 plus years in healthcare, but I only needed so many years. So I did the 16, and then I did my more recent one was at Honeyville. And I make sure that I stay within 2 pages. And I'll tell you why. Because for the most part, I wanted them to see that healthcare. And so I didn't want to go into too much detail on Honeyville. I wanted enough that they could see I had developed new skills, that I had continued to actually do contracting and sourcing, that I've been in a senior, role. But then on that first page, I put my healthcare experience, and I put a teaser on what I'd accomplished there, so they would go immediately and read the second page. Because I can tell you, as a hiring manager, you're scanning through that really quickly. So you need to be succinct, or you're going to get, it's called garbage in, garbage out. You're going to get garbage out of AI. It's not the panacea. You still have to put some structure in there. It's a tool that's going to help you, but if you don't have structure to it, you're probably not going to get the result you're hoping for.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think we
That's all
got
I had.
everybody. Arian, did you have a question?
No, not really. I just wanted to say, thanks for sharing, and I appreciated hearing about how you made sure to address any potential flaws that were in your application. Like you wanted to make sure, if they think you're overqualified, you have something to say about that. So I thought that was nice to hear.
Well, and make sure, so like the other thing that I noticed is I had a gap between HCA and the time that I got on at Honeyville. And sometimes they'll understand that it's hard, especially in some positions, that it'll take you 6 months plus to get a job. But I had about a year. And the reason I did is because I had a parent that had stage 4 cancer, and HCA had treated me well enough on my exit package that it gave me the opportunity to care for that parent. So I made sure that I worked that in the first couple of interviews that I had, so that people knew, so that if somebody come up and said, well, she's got a big gap here, why she got a gap? Somebody go, oh, well, she addressed that. You don't have to address it in every interview that you're doing, because they relay information one to the next person. But if that's in your resume, you need to make sure that you're emphasizing that. Okay.
Okay. Kim, thank you. Everybody, big round of applause, a big thank you to her. Any final parting words to this group?
Good luck, and keep the faith. It's going to happen. That this job market's going to open up, and don't settle. Do what Steve's telling you to do. Identify the opportunities that you want, that you can see that you're going to be happy with, that you're going to be successful with, and don't settle. Just keep at it.
Okay. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.